Cool. We can get started. So, welcome everybody to the first installment in our Leveling Up Your Trading series. My name is Charlie Bathgate. I am the managing partner and CEO of SangLucci.com, WallStreetJesus.com, and also TradingThePost.com, which is run by the one and only Ronchero Friedman. Ron, say hello to everybody.
Hello.
And if you're wondering why we call Ronchero, it's because that is his handle in our online chat community, which he grabbed that handle when he was a lowly, just fresh green, wet behind the ears new member, and now he's teaching people, and he's our lead educator in our ecosystem, and for very good reason. He's one of the best traders that we know. He brings 15, 20 years experience. How many?
We're going back to the 90s, like 92. So yeah, that's a long time ago.
I just saw your eyes like glaze over. You're like, it's
damn.
A long time.
It's like, has it really been that long?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a while. And I think one of the things that we love about Ronch and having him on for these types of discussions is because one of the things that makes him such a good trader is because he is so process oriented. He's very methodical, systems and process oriented. But what you often see for traders who are like that is that they can be extremely quantitative, sort of detached from their emotions or the subjective experience that they have of going through a lot of the ups and downs that most traders get. And Ron doesn't like that. He's very connected with his emotions, with his psychology, as I'm sure you'll hear throughout this. And that's one of the reasons why he's built the systems that he has, to manage those ups and downs. So we'll get into that a little bit here. But the whole point of this series, the genesis of this actually really came from a recent P&L review webinar, or the end of the month P&L review that Lucci does, where he goes over and he talks about, how did he trade this month? What was his P&L? It was, I think, was it September? Yeah, September. So he made almost $1 million in September. And I think that was the one where he announced that he really felt like he needed to step up his trading. He needed to level up. He needed to take things up another notch, and really step into the trader who he knows that he can be. So sort of actualize his potential. And that catalyzed a lot of discussions for us internally about, what does that mean? That looks different for everybody, for every trader, but almost everyone who is in this, in this webinar, in our community, who will be watching this, on YouTube, knows the experience of feeling like they are right on the cusp of breaking through their limitation into the next level of their trading. And that for some people, that means that, they're just going to become consistently profitable, right? Instead of losing money one month, making money the next month, that they're going to be consistently profitable. For some people, it means, all right, now I'm going to be, six-figure trader consistently on an annual basis. For someone like Lucci, he's like, I need to get from the point of making a couple million a year to making, 10 million a year. And for some people, it has nothing to do with their P&L. It has to do with other sort of psychological goals and benchmarks for their evolution. But this is really about how do you identify what is holding you back, and how do you level up? How do you get past that? How do you make that big leap? And there's no better way to learn than to learn from people who've been there, who've done that, and are continuing to perform at a very, very high level. So that's why we have Ronchero here. This whole series is a lead up to our next Sang Lucci Master Course. Ronchero is one of the educators, one of our lead educators for the Master Course. It starts November 16th. We will certainly talk about that later in the webinar. But if you want any more information on that, you can just go to sanglucci.com/MC. M as in Mary, C. So, Ronch, let's give these guys, someone, Christopher just dropped in the chat. No better way to learn than to get slapped in the face by Ronch. Yeah, maybe there'll be a couple digital slaps coming through this. We'll see what kind of questions we get. But Ronch, why don't you give these guys like the 2-minute summary of, your background as a trader, and then I'll start pummeling you with questions, and we can go.
Yeah, no problem. So, you know, like you said, there's some information out there and some YouTubes that where I go more into depth, but just kind of like, you know, from a high level, I was always intrigued by the markets, but you know, I probably like more people than not. Even though I was attracted to that world and wanted to be in that world, I don't have that pedigree. I didn't come from an Ivy League background. I didn't work on Wall Street. I thought that I wanted to. I was not cut from that cloth. I had to find a way to get myself involved. And I did, and I got myself in a situation where I did really, really well. But it was because the market was moving in the direction that I was trading. I really didn't have a good handle or understanding of what it was that I was doing, even though I had been through, you know, the Series 7 as a broker, been through the Series 7 and 63 and all those types of things. You're being taught how to sell and place trades. You're not being taught anything outside of that unless you figure it out on your own. So I had some, you know, back in the 90s where things went really, really well. And there was a lot of money that was made. And because of greed and hubris and stupidity, you stick around, right? You're like, oh, okay, I've got, you know, like, look at this pile I just built. And now I'm going to take $1 million and I'm going to go from a million to 10, or I'm going to go from 1 million to 30, right? Like, who doesn't have that thought? Who doesn't want to entertain that thought? Because, you know, honestly, when you get there, you hear Lucci say it a lot, like, if I reach that level, I can start living my second life, right? You kind of put some things on the back burner. Money doesn't become a concern as much anymore, and you get to kind of live that lifestyle. Well, you know, lo and behold, you get, you know, completely mopped by the market, and you're not, you know what I mean? And you can't figure out why, so you have to reset. So my journey really was about, well, I did this, I had success, I didn't understand, I knew why I had the success, I didn't understand why it evaporated so quickly. And I needed to find a way to make it sustainable, because nobody likes to go from, you know, 10, 20, 30, $40,000, and then all of a sudden you do really well and you've got a $500,000, $1 million built up, and you put yourself in that situation where they pull the rug, right? Nobody wants to live through that. I've lived it several times. So out of that, I had to find a way to make it sustainable for myself, and I had to uncover what those things were. I found a mentor back in 2009-ish, and he's a former market maker. So from 92 to 09, I had been just kind of like slogging my way through, having success on and off without any real sustainability. And when I found this individual, I would say it took me a couple of years of really just starting to understand how the mechanics of everything work, breaking it down to the minutia, so that I understood later on that I didn't need the minutia, but because I understood the minutia, then I could understand the easy parts of it better, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, you know, I guess long story short, I started like a lot of people start, and I had to go find a way to make it sustainable for me, so that I didn't crash and burn. Crashing and burning is painful, and I don't no, nobody likes it. And you know, you have to constantly reevaluate and put your trades on in different ways all of the time. It's a constant evolution. So
yeah, okay, that's a great setup for what we're gonna launch into. So, you know, we were talking before this, and you know, I was saying, and you were, you know, asking about, you know, sort of prep and everything, and I said, you know, if you could just kind of think about a time in your career when you really had to level up, like a time when you were having a problem, you just couldn't turn that corner, and then like what if you could take us back to that time, like what was the thing that you were really struggling with, and then was there a singular moment which do you remember, like where you were and what happened when you were just like, fuck this, I'm you know, I'm doing this? Or walk us through what that was like.
yeah, I think if you remember where I went through a really dark period where I had, you know, been completely decimated from an account blow up, right? And then went through a divorce and a move, and trying to figure out what my next step, you know, career wise was going to be. all of those things, right? Like it took me 5 years to just to scrape together $5,000 to get back into the game, right? So it was a big hiatus, and that was where I started to figure out, okay, here's where it comes now. Where I had I didn't necessarily have a breakthrough moment until I was able to slowly over time, patiently build up a small account to a level to where I could make different changes. And I remember getting to a point where I had finally over time built up an account to a size where I was finally able to take on more risk.
Mhm.
And it was, to put it into today's terms, just so people have a better grasp of that. I have several kids. I have two of my own and a stepson, and my oldest one is now done with school and working. And he came to me and he said, "Listen, I've got X number of dollars, small account, and I want you to help me grow this." So I'm having that same realization in his account right now because it's a small account and I have to go back to those fundamentals, those basics. And I've over the course of since the pullback in March, right? I've almost doubled his account, and it's just from hunting and pecking. And now I'm at that precipice right now where I'm like, where you just said, level it up, right? I'm right at that level where I'm ready to take his account to the next level. And at the same time, I take it with a different grain of salt because it's his money, it's his sweat and
Mhm.
work that's funding that account. And I don't want to be the one that blows it up, right?
Right.
But at the same time, I'm now at that point where I'm looking at, we've had some trades recently, like Intel was a prime example, right? Intel, it was beaten up last quarter. I'm looking at I'm looking at these charts, I'm looking at these levels, I'm looking at tape, I'm looking at sentiment, I'm looking at it, and I'm thinking this is a great opportunity for us here now to play for a gap fill, right? So, and this happens a lot, and it's part of the frustration of trading in general. So we're getting into these trades at proper and good levels, great entries. The stock starts moving up. We're like, great, we can roll this thing up. Maybe we can add some more size. Out of the blue, it spikes. It hits a level that we're looking for. But instead of continuing, this time it stops, right? And it comes back to earth. And just before earnings, it comes back into close to the area where we first started getting long. And then the next day you have earnings and the stock gets shelled. So you're sitting there and you're like, son of a bitch, right? You're like, so that's a really good example of I wanted to use that as a way to, like you're saying, level up, to go, like, here it is, we're going to size up, we're going to go. And then, they pull the rug. And, fortunately for how we trade and how I teach, really we either walked away from that trade green or even. Nobody got hurt in that trade. So that's the key to being able to put yourself in a situation where you say, okay, here's where I can level up. You can level up in that situation, because if what did happen happens, I know that I'm going to be able to walk away from that green. And at the same time, I'm like, damn it, I got to start all over again. But I keep looking for the next the next light bulb moment, or the next opportunity that it's going to get me in his account, to get him over the hurdle so that we can start doing some other things. And now you're talking about, account that grows from 10 grand to 25. And then now you're in the situation where you get away from PDT and you're able to take on bigger risk for, a move from an account that now grows from, let's say, 25 to 100 or 250, right? Now so that's right now I'm struggling. I'm it's like, walking on new ice, right? On a lake, right? You got a perfectly smooth sheet of ice. And if you're out there with your tennis shoes, you can build up speed and kind of, hit the brakes and you'll slide for a little while. But if you try and start to run real quick, you're not going to get anywhere and fall on your face.
Right.
So that's kind of, it's new ice on the pond right now for this situation. So
for that specific account you're talking about.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
I'm struggling with that. And I think it's really good for me to do that because it helps me relate to so many guys that are coming in that are in similar situations, because
Right.
not everybody can come into this environment with, a large account. It's just not the norm.
Right. And so you're talking about literally right now, you're talking about leveling up in the sense of sizing up, like increasing the size of your
Absolutely.
trades. Right.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
it sounds like for you, I mean, basically the framework that you just laid out is like making sure, I mean, knowing you, having the conversations that we've had in the past, it seems like there was a point in your career where the pain of blowing up got so seared into your brain that you were like, I'm just not going back here again. Like I'm not doing it. And then, so your sort of way of leveling up, like psychologically, was to say, I have to build a framework and a strategy to make sure that my risk is so dialed in that I never am putting myself in that situation again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that was exactly the case with what just happened, with Intel. We were in this situation. We set it up correctly. We entered correctly. We rolled correctly. We wrote, we had some protection where we needed the protection. And then when they pulled the rug, it was, it's just more of a, how am I going to get through that? Because mentally, when you put that much effort into it and you walk away barely green or even, you're frustrated, right? Like just frustrated. And you know that that's a part of the game, but it doesn't make it any easier to quell that frustration.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that's one of the reasons why I think the people who learn from you in the master course, the people who learn from you in Trading the Post, like they feel this sense of control, I think, over their trading, and a sense of like for the first time, they're not exposed to just like incoming fire at any point. They're protected because they have this risk dialed in. I mean, do you pinpoint it back to that time in your life when you were rebuilding your account up to like $5,000? Was that blow up the one that where you just said, I'm never going back again? Or like, what was the
Yeah,
moment?
well, I mean, I was okay. So this was post divorce. I had moved, from Colorado back to California for the second time,
Right.
and California is expensive, right? So here I am, trying to scrape my life back together for 5 years. I'm living with people half my age in a room above a garage. My kids are, I see them every other weekend and on Wednesdays. I'm crying myself to sleep, literally. Like, how did I get here? And it was such a horrific realization to, come home at the end of the day and, look at where I was and where I had found myself. And it was so painful and seared such a deep memory that I was like, I can never go back to that spot ever again.
Right.
Right. That was the moment that I was like, I have got to find whatever it takes to get out of this. And more importantly, to never revisit that place again.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's heavy stuff, and but that's often where I think Lucci is the same way. We've talked about a lot. There's a lot of people. I'm the same way in my in my life and my entrepreneurial experience where I have to experience something. I got to experience the pain to a certain degree before, for some reason, the pieces in the machine click into place, and I'm like, okay, I can't do this anymore. Like I can't do it anymore. I'm done with it. And that's when change takes place. And so I think for everybody, but it doesn't necessarily have to be like that. Right. I mean, and that's one of the things that we try to do is help people get ahead of those experiences so that, you don't have to be in essentially traumatic circumstances in order to make that shift. Do you, when you look at people the people in our community, the traders you work with, I mean, are there ceilings that you see people bumping their heads up against pretty commonly? Are there certain themes that you see people struggling with?
So what's really interesting, especially about the trading the post room now, is that there are people who are in the trading the post room who are really good and vocal about like, hey, I'm struggling with this, or I'm doing well with this. And then I have some traders that don't speak up as much. And I have this array of traders who have come in, and some of them have done so well that they don't know what to do with the good, right? Like I've got a couple of guys that have gone just absolutely ballistic, right?
Yeah, right.
They applied what they learned, and now they're sitting on a pile of money and they're like, what do I do with it? You know what I mean?
Totally.
So that's a form of a ceiling, right? It's a good ceiling, but
Yeah.
they're now they're struggling with, what do I do with this? And then I have some traders that are in the room, and I see the struggles that they have, and it's more about them being able to control their own emotion at the appropriate spot to make the breakthrough. And I've watched a lot of traders go from oh man, I missed that one, or I took a loss, and now there are more traders in the room that are saying, okay, that wasn't a great trade, I'm out even, right? That's a monumental increase in skill and proficiency just to move to that level. So there's a range of what ceilings are for different people and different traders, right? And the guys that are kind of at that point right now where they're not where they're in, before where they were losing, now they're breaking even. Now the next step for them is the success side in the form of more winning trades, right? They've moved from having losers to having small losers to breaking even to now being on the cusp of being profitable traders. So there's a wide swath there of different types of ceilings that everybody faces every day.
Yeah. Yeah. And I will say it's one of the things that really surprises traders is that maintaining success and being successful and psychologically enduring success, which is a weird way to frame it, is actually way harder than people think. I think most people expect, once I start making whatever, 6 figures a year, everything else, all my problems at that point are going to be really small and manageable. But the truth is, it's hard for a lot of people to feel like they're deserving of success, to feel like, to not get complacent. There are people who have strategies. I mean, Ronch, you've probably been there at times where you're just like, I know I can make a certain amount a month basically on autopilot as long as the markets are in, a certain, acting a certain way. And how do I not check out? How do I not get complacent? How do I not, so that is certainly a ceiling. And I guess the reason we're saying this is everybody's got another level to their growth. Everybody's got another challenge ahead of them. It doesn't matter if you're in your first day doing this, or if you're, like Ronch sitting here talking about it, and he's, almost 30 years in to your career. So,
Right.
So it never ends. I mean, do you think, in your own experience and in watching people go through it, watching other people go through it, is it a function of focus, of saying, I have to just focus on that one thing and not trying to do too much at a given time? Or what do you think determines how people, why people get through this stuff?
I think some people, I'm similar in this regard. I think some people can hear a message 10 times and they know what they're supposed to do, but they can't do it. And then the 11th time, the message is delivered in a slightly different way, and all of a sudden the light bulb goes, right?
Yeah.
So, like a perfect example is, I have an athletic background. I grew up playing ice hockey and lacrosse. And within the last couple of years, I just started playing tennis, right? And I had a match on Saturday, and I played really, really well. I just playing really well. Yesterday, I go out, and it was like I had never picked up the racket before.
Yeah.
And I was so frustrated that, and I mean, and I know when I have to quit. And I got to the point to where I was like, I was just slapping the ball into the screen behind me, right?
Like looking at your rackets and thinking which one you can break, basically.
Yeah, I was like, this is a stupid racket. This is a stupid ball. This is a stupid game. All these people out here are stupid. The guy I'm playing is stupid. Like, I was just like, I was at my wit's end, right?
Yep.
And trading can be very much like that. You know what you're supposed to do. You know when you're supposed to do it, and you still don't do it. And that happens to traders. So getting them to see it in a different light, and hit the ball, differently,
Mhm.
And that can make a huge difference. And you know, some guys walk in and they're like, oh yeah, okay, I got that, and boom, like instant, right? They're like,
Mhm.
they just like a duck to water. For me, it was repeat, drill, rehearse, like over and over and over and over, and then one day it just like clicks. And that's kind of where you know, we have the wide array of people, you know, in our community that go through the same thing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that's one of the reasons why I think we preach in the master course, like we always start with self-awareness, right? It's really important to understand, how do you learn? What are the things that help you? If you look back in in the past and you think about the times when you've had breakthroughs in other areas of your life, like what did you do differently that facilitated that? Apply the same thing to trading. There are people who, I think it's really easy in the trading community to look at Twitter, to look at all these people like whatever, like you, even though you're not an asshole, but there's assholes out there on, you know, who are selling education, and they're preaching like, you got to do it my way, just follow my system and it'll work. And, you know, I think, Ronch, what you're saying, if I'm hearing you correctly, is you gotta embrace your own style, your own way of learning. If you're a visual learner and you're trying to read, you know, options textbooks, it's probably not going to work for you that well. Like, you know, give yourself another look, get another perspective. Yeah.
Totally. And you know, one of the things that we do, I think that we do in our community is that you hear, you get the mechanics of what's supposed to happen, and if you can understand the mechanics of what's supposed to happen, then like you just said, if you can identify who you are and what's comfortable for you and what you do well, then you key in on that spot, and as you become really good at that, then you can expand out to another part of the methodology that we use, right?
Right.
And then you grow, and all of a sudden now you have this you know, this Swiss Army knife that you can basically pull out whatever tool you need to based on what the environment is. But it can take a long time to get there.
Yeah. Did you have times in your career where you were just trying to go too fast, where you were like ahead of yourself? You were trying to level up to like 3 levels up when really you just needed to focus on what was right in front of you?
So that's the, and that goes back to my tennis analogy. Yesterday, what I was doing was everything that I did, even though I knew what I was supposed to do, I was doing it too fast. I
Yeah.
needed to slow down a half a step, and that can be that's very much like what happens in the market, right? You look for signs, signals, levels, tape, all these different things. But if you are too anxious and you try to make it happen before it's ready to happen, you lose the point, right?
Right. Right.
And that's where a lot of people, that's a lot of people's struggle, that's a lot of traders struggle, is to not just recognize that, but to execute when the time comes. Make
Right.
sense?
Yes. Yeah. And it's important to recognize that everybody has their own path in, you know, in this game. And it's very easy to look at people like Ronch or like Lucci and to say, what am I doing wrong? These guys are making, you know, X amount a month and they've got all the stuff figured out, and I should be, you know, I should be there. But the truth is, like, everyone's got to go through it at some point, right? You got to take those steps. You can't jump any part of the learning process. Otherwise you end up making money, kind of getting lucky, making money,
Yes.
and the market will take it
Takes it
right back
back.
away from you. Yeah, it takes it
Yep.
right back. So,
Yep.
yeah. I mean, what else for people who are sitting there and they're like, all right, I have this like sixth sense. I know there's something holding me back right now from taking the next step in my evolution as a trader. I don't know exactly what it is though. Like, what would be your advice to them to say, you know, to help them kind of put their finger on what it is that's actually, you know, holding them back right now?
Well, one of the things that, you know, that we that I do with the traders in my room is, you know, we have an acronym CTFD, which is calm the F down, right?
Right.
That's actually a really big deal, because if you can control your emotion, and you know, you can breathe through some tough spots, it can really help guys get to the next, you know, to get to the next level. It can be something as simple as that, right? And then what you talk about is knowing yourself. If you know, do you really know yourself? And if you do, you know what, you know, how you're going to react in a certain situation. So you have to focus on changing that behavior in that situation, which is really hard to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, we're going to do, we'll give away, you know, some things that we go way more in depth in the master course. But, you know, one of the things that we talk about is the utility of a training journal. And especially when you're in this part of your life where you're trying to assess, you know, is this the, you know, what am I really struggling with? Like trying to generate more self-awareness. What you will notice if you keep a journal for, let's say, 60 days, and then you read back through that, is you'll find patterns. You'll find things that like, oh, this thing keeps coming up over and over, that I made money that day, I was excited. The next day I was over enthusiastic and I gave it all back, right? And you'll find these things that keep kind of coming up and rising to the surface. That's a big signal to you that that's something that you need to pay attention to. And I think trading journals get, I mean, I'm interested to know what you think about them, Ronch, but like, I think people sometimes are dismissive of trading journals. They're like, oh, that's what you do when you're like 3 months into your career or whatever. That's like training wheels kind of shit. But the truth is, I know traders who traded huge size, who are professionals, have been doing it for 30 years. And when they feel off their game, that's one of the first things that they go back to. That's like, you know, LeBron going back to his jump shot, or I don't know what the equivalent is, but Federer going back to his backhand, like the fundamentals, right? So did you ever rely on, like, what are there tools that you use to kind of like jog yourself out of this?
So for me, instead of a trading journal, what I'll do is I'll write notes on a chart, right? Like I have 2 different platforms I use, and I'll write notes on a chart, and if I did something right or if I did something wrong, I kind of make a note, you know, here's what was going on at this point in time, right? Like, you know, Biogen is the classic example, right? That I always go back to. And there were certain things that we look for, and we had those things, and we made notes about those things and where we entered a trade. So when that situation rises again, we can go back and review that specific environment. Does it make sense? Did it make sense? If I kept a journal and I went back, and part of it that can make it hard for me is because I use, you know, 3 different types of time frames in my trades. If I put together a journal and mash those together, I don't want to look at that, because my head's kind of a effed up place to begin with half the time. So I just
trying to make things more complicated than they already are.
Absolutely. Just like that Intel example, right? I was like, okay, this is what I was thinking. Like, I won't forget that setup, right? Because I put time and energy and effort into it, just like I won't forget the Biogen setup. And just like, you know, I won't forget like this Visa setup that we're looking at, this Nike setup that we're looking at, this Lulu setup that we're, you know what I mean? Like all of these different setups, I don't forget the scenario or the setup. And I don't need to go back to my trading journal to look at how many times did I scalp JPM today to, you know, to make $2,000, right? I'm like probably 15 or 20, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like if you just get on that wagon for that day, and that's what your focus is, or that's what's working for you because nothing else is, then okay. And then the next day I might switch to something different, and it might be a trade that lasts for 3 or 4 days. So the journal isn't helpful for me like it is some other guys, because I probably have a different approach to it. So for me, like I said, it's making the notes on a chart, and or remembering a situation so well because we spent so much time on it that I'm unlikely to forget it, unless, you know, 5 years rolls by and then we go back. But even some of that, I still have, like, I'm still surprised when I pull up charts that on stocks that I hadn't looked at in a long time. Like Alexion was one. I looked back and I was like, shit, look at all this, all the work that I did on this chart, and where are we at now, right? Like now we're back at these levels where 5 years ago I didn't think we'd be at, and I'm like, that's of interest to me now, right? So
right.
Yeah,
perfect example of knowing yourself, knowing your learning process, knowing the style that works for you. You're not going to force yourself to write down, you know, trading journal, but you adapted it to more of a visual framework of doing it on charts.
totally.
And yeah. I mean, this is one of the reasons why I wanted to kick off the series with you, and not to blow smoke up your ass, but I think you're like an incredible example of somebody who like certainly had your struggles, no doubt about that, as we talked about at the beginning, but you came to a point where you were just like, I don't give a shit what works for everybody else. I'm just going to do what works for me, and I'm going to do what I need to do to feel comfortable. Like, you learned a lot of your technique from Lucci. You learned tape from Lucci, right? But
Yes.
you looked at the risk in the way he was putting risk on sometimes, and you were like, I don't feel comfortable with that. That's not what I'm going to do. So you know, developed your own system to take what you learned from him and apply it to what made you feel comfortable, you know, trading. And for you guys that are out there thinking about, like, how do I kind of break through to the next level? How do I push through this barrier? I think one of the places to pay attention to is areas where you're trying to replicate somebody else's success, maybe, instead of actually listening to what works for you and what makes you feel comfortable in doing it, you know, following that path, if that makes sense. So I know we got some questions, and we will start answering them. And if you have any more questions for Ronch, definitely drop them into the Q&A section, and we'll start going through some of these in just a second. I'm going to do a quick shameless plug for the master course, because that's what I do. So Ronch started out as a student in the master course many moons ago, and now he's helping teach it, which is pretty fucking awesome, if I do say so myself. He's the first person that Lucci has ever, and that us as an organization, that we've ever brought out of, you know, the role of a student, and you know, put out there teaching and doing what we, you know, teaching what he does and his style of applying everything, and doing what we do. So it's a big deal, and there's a big reason why, you know, he's doing that. So if you guys go to, you can go to 3ltplaybook.com/SL-master-course, or you can just go to sayinglucci.com/MC. It'll redirect you there. You'll see all the information on the master course. We're doing these much less frequently these days because, in part, they're so much bigger. They're so much more in depth. I mean, now the whole course, a whole live course, takes about 2.5 months. And that's because we have Ronch teaching classes. Lucci is obviously in there teaching classes. We have new classes with Chris Cady, and I help him out with those around trading psychology. We've got Wall Street Jesus teaching some stuff. So this education, I'm heavily biased, but you're not going to learn how to do these professional level trading techniques for $3,000 anywhere else. You might be able to go into a good prop firm and look over someone's shoulder for 6 months and pick some of the stuff up. But short of that, there's just no way you're going to be able to learn this level of stuff for this price. So all the information in terms of how it works and everything, what we teach, it's all on the master course page. Told you guys how to get there, and the next live one starts November 16th. So you got some time coming up, but you get access to all the recordings right away. So if you want to sign up and get in there right now, you can totally do that. You can start watching these some of the recorded content right away. So I will spare you guys any more pitching from there. Yes, does the class come with the chat room? Yes, you get 2 months of free Steam Room access, which is a big part of you being in there, watching the stuff play out on a daily basis. You also get a week of access to Ronchero's Trading the Post room, which is a kind of a private room within our community. And if you want to continue on as a subscriber from there, we give you a pretty steep discount compared to what everybody else gets. All right, so let's take some questions. What is the best advice to start growing a small account? From Andrea.
So, you know, kind of what I'm dealing with right now with my oldest kid's account is, you know, I don't want to put him in a situation where I you know, take 10 grand and turn it into 5. That anybody can do that, right? And that comes back to managing risk and what are you comfortable with risk wise, and how, you know, what is the size of your account? So you have to become a patient trader in that scenario, and you have to be willing to look at your results, let's say from a percentage basis, right? So if I have a 100% return and it's a small account, it still remains a small account, but the percentage return is fantastic, right? Like if anybody that hits 100% over the course of a year has done really, really well. The question is, can you be patient over time to get it to a point to where the balance reflects you being able to take on more risk to grow that account? So I think small accounts are one of two things. You work hard and you do figure out yourself, and you do find a way to look at it and, like you said, level up and put on more risk at appropriate times, or you just take small risk in good spots and you just stack up your profits over time. And then over time, you kind of stop and you take a look and you're like, hey, I just grew from 5 grand to 10 grand. And now I'm at 30 grand, I'm at 40 grand. And now the picture changes for you. Now you can take more risk. You can put on different types of trades. So more than anything else, I think patience is the key for the small account holder.
Well said. When you get a chance, just curious as to what you mean when you say looking at tape. Ronch, do you want to explain just the basics of what tape is and how you use it?
So in the master course, tape is something that that Lucci teaches, and basically it's looking at time and sales and the level 2 book. So we get into more detail in that in the master course, but basically what we're doing is we're looking for where are buyers, where are sellers, and are they coming in at specific prices or levels in an aggressive or non-aggressive way, and regardless of direction, whether that's up or down. And do we have any kind of edge or advantage in that scenario to take advantage of that trade? So reading tape is basically just looking at where is the direction of the price headed, and what's happening to that price at that given point in time. And it's not about who's buying it or why they're buying it. It's simply about, this is where the activity is, and we're looking for those footprints so that when we do enter a trade, we're putting ourselves in the best probability to have success. So reading the tape is simply just looking at where is the buying and selling happening and which direction should we go based on that activity.
And if you guys are curious about tape, just go to our YouTube channel and search tape reading, or search on YouTube saying Lucci tape reading. We got a ton of free content out there that goes deep into tape reading. How do you, let's see, Ronchero, what tips or advice would you tell a 20-year-old version of yourself to get where you are? Good question.
A 20-year-old version of myself was not ready to listen to the 53-year-old version of myself. The 20-year-old version of myself would have just been like hanging out the window, double birds flying. So I
would love to be 20-year-old Ronch. That would be awesome.
I was in no way, shape, or form ready to hear or receive that information as a 20-year-old as I am today. But if I could have gotten the 20-year-old Ronchero to CTFD for more than 20 seconds, it would have at that point in time, it would have simply been, just calm down. Just don't stay. Just like it's like anytime I have trouble with something, it's because I'm going too fast, and I constantly have to be reminded, just slow down. And 20-year-old Ronchero would have, no way.
Yeah.
Would have never would have heard it.
Yep. I think we see that a lot with the advice that young guns get in the community, and especially in the psychology channel of the steam room. They're like, hey, I need help when they're asking questions and stuff. And almost across the board, it's older veteran trainers coming in being like, first thing you got to do, calm the fuck down. You just got to calm down. Everything's gonna be all right. Take it slow. I think when we're younger, we all just want things to happen like right away. Just
well, yeah. I mean, 20-year-old me, I was, if I would have had 20 grand, I would have been like, turn this into 2 million so I can go to Ibiza for 6 months and chill, right? that, that would have been my response at that time.
Yeah, well said. Ryan is asking, when you open the Steam room for new members? I got an email a couple weeks ago. You're working on it. Okay. Yeah. So if you guys are asking, and someone else asked a question about, can you join the Steam room without taking the master course? Yes, you can. We changed our Steam room process to an application process. So we're really trying to make sure the quality of the experience for everybody is very high. So we have an application process, and then we're only letting in a certain number of people per week. So Ryan, if you guys go to wallstreetjesus.com, you can see how to apply to the Steam room, and then you will get notified when your time is, when your invite is ready. It shouldn't be a wait of more than a week or two at this point. We've really picked up how quickly we're letting people in. So let's get some more questions for Ronch. When you started selling premium, was it more a matter of having the account size to do so, or was it more adjusting your trading strategy, or both?
Okay, so the good question. It's a little bit of both. Smaller accounts, especially when you're, doing some of the things that we do in trading the post. If you're in a longer term position, if you're in a leap and you're collecting premium and you're under the PDT amount, you start to have to look at things a little bit differently, because if you are collecting premium and that trade goes against you, you have to adjust that trade. Now, if you're under the PDT limit, you can put yourself in a situation where you get your account locked up, right? So you have to look at how much cushion can I give myself in the case of collecting premium. Am I picking good places as levels where I'm likely to see the stock either support or resist? And if you are picking those good levels and you're using, let's say, a week's worth of time decay to collect that premium, it will work pretty well. And there are many times when, as a small account holder, let's say you're only going to do that once a week. And my encouragement, my advice would be, if you find the right spot and you are writing and you collect 50% in a day, shut it down. Take your 50% and chill out, right? And or if you get, over the course of a week, your premium collection, you get to 80%, take your 80% and go home, right? If you try and stay there for expiration and you want it to go to zero, you're gonna get burned at some point. Perfect example was Amazon on Friday. At the end of the day, the last 10 minutes of trading, the stock went from being up, maybe $1 to up almost 30 in a very quick period of time. That is a classic technique that is used on the floor. And if you don't know that, and you don't know it's coming, and you're the guy that's under 25 grand and you're collecting premium and you're bouncing along doing great, and you didn't take your 50% or your 80% and go home and call it a day, now you've got a real problem on your hands and your little account stays little. So that would be, how I would approach collecting premium on a smaller account. You get your win, you take it and you move on. If it's not working, you take, you shut it down and you look for another spot. That's why I say a small account has to be patient in order for it to grow, because the rights don't always work the way that you want them to. If you're not getting your levels correct, etc., you've got some adjustments to make until you can find that groove, right?
Well said. It's a great question. Do you guys know of any successful traders who have avoided blowing up? I ask as I wonder how critical the experience is to the level of learning needed to be consistently profitable.
So one of the things that's difficult for most people to wrap their heads around, especially in trading, is the need or the want to have consistency, as if you were going to a 9-to-5 job where you have a salary that's predictable and knowable and comfortable, and you can, build your world around that. I have a handful of traders in our service that, when they came in, were struggling with that mindset. And it was more about, listen, what kinds of decisions are you making and when are you making those decisions? And having, this mindset of, I need to make 4 grand a week, or I need to make 2 grand a week, or whatever the number is, doesn't matter. That mindset, in 9 times out of 10, holds somebody back. And I've been able to work with a good handful of traders in the service who have gone from having that mindset or having that limitation to all of a sudden having 6-figure months that's a massive change for a trader to be able to move from a mindset of I need consistency to I need to make good decisions. And holy shit, I didn't think I'd make six figures this month, right? That's a more important breakthrough than trying to find, oh, I need to be consistent.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of traders who I know who have not blown up. The only ones who I can think of are people who came from like institutional desks. They were like traded for banks, like on prop desk for banks or something like that. And
That's fair.
their risk was, I mean, they literally had a risk manager who was just breathing down their neck, and they were more like executing somebody else's strategy. And they like had years of sort of institutional support. But even those guys really struggle when they go then out on your own, because when you're trading your own money, it's a totally different ballgame than when you're trading whatever, JP Morgan's money. I think you can do it. I definitely know people who blew up their account when it was like 15 grand, and then they became $1 million traders and they didn't blow up again.
I've done it 3 times.
Yeah, but almost every trader I know has blown big. Yeah, has blown up like a big account. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't think it's necessary, John. I'm not going to say like you have to, but I think the stigma of like the amount of shame and anger and self-hate that people feel after they blow up their account versus how common it is still something that is remarkable. I mean, Lucci did a QTR podcast just talking all about blowing up accounts, because we get people hitting us up all the time being like, I blew up my account. I'm like distraught. What the hell do I do? And the truth is, it's like it happens every day to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and thousands of people. So the important thing to do is like put the emotions aside, learn from it, and learn how you cannot do it again.
Yeah, I mean, you are playing a rigged game, right? What you have to understand is that as long as you know you're playing a rigged game, and if you understand how the game is rigged, then you have a chance. But if you don't understand that, it can be very difficult and very painful, and you're just left shaking your head and going, why? Right? Why did that happen?
Right. Which is not a position anybody wants to be in, shaking their head and saying why. That's not a good point to be in life. All right, can you talk about your mental toughness about coming back from big losses?
So there, that period of time that I told you about, where I went through the divorce and was trying to pull my life back together, I didn't expect during that time, I didn't expect to come back to where I'm at now. I did not. I spent 5 years walking around with my head down, right? So that was not mental toughness. That was wallowing in ignominious gripe for 5 years, right? So everybody goes through a different journey and or process. As far as mental toughness, I would say for me, it's not mental toughness. It's just about being patient. And the more that you can be patient and react when the market gives you the opportunity, as opposed to, hey, it's October 25th and I need to make $4,000 today. Nobody cares. The market doesn't, you know what I mean? Nobody cares. But if you sit there and you wait for the right opportunity based on what you've learned and have experienced, then you know where the spots are, and that's where you can take your opportunity. It doesn't mean you're going to be successful, but you're putting yourself in the best areas of probability to be successful. That, I think, is a big difference and change in mindset, and I think translates to what people refer to as mental toughness. To me, it's just being patient.
Ben is asking, will you have a masterclass in January, February? No, we will probably still be teaching the masterclass we're starting in November in January, because of the holidays. We'll be taking a little bit of break. The way the masterclass works, once you sign up, you're a lifetime member, right? So you can access all the recorded material anytime you want, and then you get access to all future live sessions. You can keep coming back as much as you want. So people sign up all the time, year round, regardless of when we're starting a class. But if you're really set on, I want to start when a live class is starting, then if you don't start in November on the November 16th session, the next one will probably not be until, I would say, July of 2021 would probably be the next time we would start a new one. All right, Ronch, I know you got some stuff to do, so let's go one more question for you. Something like psychological. What do we got? In the simplest explanation, can you describe from your perspective how the game is rigged? You could write a book on this stuff.
There's so many traps and games that get played, and what you don't know about them until you're taught what they are and how to spot them, right? So we spend a lot of time in the master course talking about those types of scenarios. In the Trading the Post room, we spend a lot of time not only just using tape, but we use levels of support and resistance. And we also use, Fibonacci levels to identify areas where we could potentially see change, to help us forecast, to help us say, this is the right place and time to do something. This is not the right place and time to do something.
Word. All right. Well, guys, this has been great. We appreciate you all being here. This is the first of this series, like I said. So we're coming up on Thursday. It'll be Chris Cady and I. If you guys don't know Chris Cady, go search our YouTube channel for Chris Cady. He is the man. We're going to go deep in some psychology stuff because he and I nerd out on that. Ronch, thank you for being here. Thank you for teaching the master course with us. As we said, it starts November 16th. You guys definitely want to learn directly from this man. He is extremely good at what he does. He's helped a lot of people out there. So I hope you guys get a chance to join us. If you have any questions on anything that we covered, hit us up, contact@sayinglucci.com or contact@wallstreetjesus.com. It all goes to the same place. And we'll see you Thursday.
Thanks, Charlie.
Thanks, Raj.
All right. We'll see you.